Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Welcome to our 51st Saturday Online Kashmir Cultural Heritage Awareness Series. Today's prayer is going to be by Sri Ashok Subramaniam. From his background, I could see he is mostly a self-made musician, hailing from a family of musicians. He began his more formal learning from Srimati Rukmani Ramani, daughter of Sri Papanasam Sivan, and later with the living legend Sangeeta Kalanidhi T.N. Seshgopalan. Deeply interested in formal Tamil poetry, he has translated the 500 plus verses of magnum opus of Muka Kavi in Tamil poetry form. He moved to Bay Area in mid-80s to pursue a career as a software professional. Today, he is joining from San Jose, California, where he has been teaching music in the Bay Area for the past 24 years. He is joining us at very early hours today during the weekend. Thank you, Ashok ji. We look forward to seeing you more, and please.
Namaste ji. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Karana Parachitrupa Kachi Purasimni Kamapita Gada Kachana Viharati Karuna Kashmir Tabaka Komalangalata Andadikarani Adudum Kadanda Aganda Chitta Vilda Kariya Vilayadudaya Viyatum Arul Kanninal Kajiyil Kamachi Kashmir Kungumappool Ponnudal Uyarkama Bidam Uraibavade Kamapidam Uraibavade
Thank you, Ashok ji. It was wonderful. We are very pleased to get to know you and hope to see you more. And thanks for joining us. Today's lecture will be continuation by Colonel Tikoo, Ph.D. on the same topic we had last week. Those who are joining today or watching this for the first time, please watch our previous episode by Colonel Tikoo on July 30th, which was our 50th. His presentation is a recap and also overview of all what we have been talking about. Historical and cultural dimensions of Kashmiri Pandit Exodus 1989-90. Now we requested Colonel G to join us again today as he wanted to answer questions. Most importantly, there was a question asking, is Kashmir part of India? While the answer is obvious, we want to hear what Colonel Tikoo has to say on that, as there are several narratives. Also in our YouTube, there are several comments which we would also be going through. We hope viewers to join and ask questions on anything connected with Kashmir. As Tikoo mentioned in previous session 2 that is prepared to answer. We would like to hand over to Colonel Tikoo. Colonel G, I hope you understood that prayer was in Tamil. I hope you understood that.
I didn't understand wholly, but it was a soul stirring prayer, and it was excellent rendition. Excellent rendition.
We are very pleased. People are joining from all over the world, and there is from San Jose. And the one previous also, we had somebody from Connecticut. So today, you can elaborate on that question, and I'm hoping to see more questions on the message board. I don't see anything yet. So if you would like to continue or anything that you would like to touch upon further, that will be really nice.
Thank you, Shankarji. My pranam to Shankaracharya Sri Kanchi Kamoti Peetham, and thank you to you for having given me this opportunity once again to speak on an issue that has really dogged India and, in fact, the whole subcontinent for the last 75 years since we became independent. But before I do that, I would like to convey my deep appreciation and thanks to Ashok Subramaniam ji for a wonderful rendition. And last time also there was a beautiful rendition of the Tamil prayer. It's so soul stirring, and one would continue to keep listening to it. And we have our own connection with Tamil Nadu, as my nephew is married to a Tamil girl. So we are total Kashmir to Kanyakumari type of family, and that really truly speaks about India. Thank you so much, Ashokji, for this wonderful prayer. Thank you. Now, coming to what I had actually last time, that question had come up about somebody from abroad asking, does Kashmir belong to India? Let's not let me state very categorically that de facto and de jure both, Kashmir belongs to India, and not the part of Kashmir that is presently with us, but the whole of Jammu and Kashmir. The part which is occupied by Pakistan, which we call Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir, POJK, was grabbed by Pakistan in a war. And unfortunately, at that time, what happened, a combination of many factors, because that happened immediately after the Second World War, and new blocks were being formed. The communists came up, and the allies and communists were divided by an iron curtain, so everyone was playing his own games. And newly independent India, ruled by Jawaharlal Nehru and the other Congress people, obviously did not understand much of real politics, and they also committed number of mistakes which kept this issue burning alive even till today, and led to uprising in 1989-90, which saw whole lot of religious minority being driven out of Kashmir after suffering many miseries, I would say. Therefore, let me get back to, I had said last time when I was talking about this issue, I had reached this I had reached the stage where Pakistan had attacked India on 22nd October 1947, because on 14th August and 15th August, on 14th August when Pakistan came into being, at 15th August India came into being, except for three states in India, and over 560 Rajas and Maharajas and Nawabs and rulers had already signed the instrument of accession, except for these three. And we know that Pakistan, without waiting for the Maharaja, who had been given the powers through Government of India Independence Act 1947 to decide whether he wants to go to India or Pakistan, had invaded Kashmir. And since at that time there was hardly any forces available with the Maharaja, he did what he could. But the raiders, which were commanded by Pakistani troops, and the whole force, which was commanded by General Akbar Khan, regular officer of the Pakistan Army, they reached the outskirts of Srinagar. And then on 26th October, after Maharaja Hari Singh had signed the instrument of accession, on 27th October morning, Indian troops started coming there, arriving in Srinagar, and they started slowly driving out the raiders. And on in 1948, early 1940, end of 47, Jawaharlal Nehru took the case to United Nations under, I would say, that a game plan prepared by the British and their allies. At that time, before I move to that, just want to say that British was much more powerful, and they decided on the issues of subcontinent, because America had just emerged as a big power, overshadowing Britain during Second World War. So they were still in the process of understanding the world real politic, and British was the one which was actually guiding them in this. Now, once the matter was taken to the United Nations, much against the wishes of the cabinet. In fact, I have read somewhere that even Sardar Patel decided to resign, but he was prevailed upon by Mahatma Gandhi not to precipitate the situation. And unfortunately, the matter went to United Nations. Everyone played their own games, with the result that it continued there for almost a year, more than a year, I would say. And finally, it ended up with the United Nations passing three, four resolutions. The one which was passed on 13th August 1948 was the most significant one, because that is what decided the whole issue, and that is what is a matter of contention between India and Pakistan. It had four parts, and its four parts basically, what it meant was that in part one, it basically created the settlement between the two nations. They should start fighting at each other. That means they should implement ceasefire. There should be no fighting. Second, they will make a United Nations commission for India and Pakistan, which will oversee the ceasefire. Third was that both India and both Pakistan should first take out all its troops from the occupied territories, including Pakistani nationals and tribals. You know, by the time the war ceasefire came into effect, the Pakistan army had already, as a formal Pakistan army, they were already fighting the war in Kashmir against Indian army. So they were asked to vacate. Based on that vacation, after that was confirmed by the United Nations Commission for India and Pakistan, India was supposed to vacate its troops and keep minimum troops available. And after that, there would be a plebiscite, which will be held under the aegis of the United Nations Commission for India and Pakistan. And the administration at that time will be carried out by the local authorities under Government of India. Now, all these things were supposed to be one after the other, but unfortunately, Pakistan did not implement the first part. That is, they did not withdraw their troops, they did not withdraw their tribal, they did not withdraw their so many other elements which had come into Kashmir and taken hold of it, and they continue to occupy it. In the meantime, the matter continued in the United Nations, and finally, both India and Pakistan agreed upon a ceasefire, which came into effect on 1st January 1949. And that ceasefire line that came into effect on that day, by and large, that ceasefire continues even till today, except minor variations. And those variations also came into being because 1965 Pakistan violated that agreement, attacked India, and then there was an agreement in Tashkent in January 6, 1966. where we, after the 65 war, we returned to them some strategic areas, including Haji Pir Pass, and they returned to us some areas which they had captured in Chamjoria. But in 71 war, after that, whatever areas were captured at both India and Pakistan, in J&K, Pakistan hardly captured anything because they got a solid beating on that war and they lost one part of the country. So though in 1971 at Simla, both Pakistan and India continued to hold on those areas in J&K which they had been captured during the war, that is 71 war. However, despite the agreement that matters between the two countries will be resolved by talks and there will be no violation by force of each other's territory across the ceasefire line, which was then renamed as line of control. And this will continue. However, again, as we all know, that in 1999, Kargil war took place. What happened in Kargil was that huge areas in Kargil, which is through which runs the lifeline for Leh Srinagar Leh National Highway 1A. That time now it is 44, and that those areas overlooking that highway were captured. The whole aim was to isolate Leh and ensure that Siachen is not supplied by the Indian army, Indian government, so that the whole aim was to cut that communication line. However, as we know that they violated that agreement between the two forces, because during winter months between October and March, uh, on those heights which are ranging from 17, 18, 19, 20,000 feet, it is so cold that maintaining troops was impossible, and it snowed so heavily that you would put troops in danger. Purely living there becomes so difficult. Therefore, it had been agreed by both sides that during winter month they should go back to lower areas, and during summer they should come back to those areas. But in 99, when we vacated those areas, they sent their troops from Northern Light Infantry, and then there was Kargil war, and then what happened was that India threw them out, and I don't want to get into it. Those area was recaptured by India, and because by then both India and Pakistan had become nuclear powers, the whole world was alarmed uh, by this very foolish act of Pakistan. Particularly, this was done by General Musharraf because he happened to be chief of the army staff, and because of that reason, he finally overthrew Musharraf, and the whole world condemned them. That how could a nation, carry out such violation of others' territory and put the whole world at risk of nuclear war, and that's how that war ended. Now, as far as the whether Kashmir is part of India or not, I mean, there is a issue. There is some people have this doubt because for nearly almost till the present government came into power, present government at the center came to, we never ever talked about Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And it is because of this reason that people think that there is a problem with India's stand. But it is not true. The fact is this, that the Maharaja Hari Singh, to whom powers had been given for accession, he carried out an accession. He signed the instrument of accession with India. He did not sign the instrument of accession with Pakistan, and therefore, legally speaking, the whole of state belongs to India. Pakistan attacked that country. We committed some mistake during United Nations because we should have taken this under Charter 7 or something, which deals with the vacation of aggression, but we took it under United Nations Charter 21, which says resolution of conflict. But I won't go into that all those details. We had an English Governor General. The chief of the army staff for both India and Pakistan was Field Marshal Auchinleck, and we had an English chief of staff, chief of the army staff, and they had an English chief of the army staff. Auchinleck was commander in chief, and they played their own games. And at that nation stage, when India had just become free, we played into their hands, and we are now stuck with the problem. So this was going on, and in 1989 again that huge uprising took place in Kashmir. Now you might ask me, if everything is fine, then how did the uprising take place? Well, there are many factors to that, but we cannot see this in isolation. As you know, in late 70s and early 80s, till about 90, when the uprising took place in Kashmir. After the overthrow of Shah of Iran by fundamentalist Muslim forces led by Ayatollah Khomeini, there was a kind of Muslim upsurge and militant Muslim upsurge in all over the world, and there was a competition between Shias and Sunnis, and therefore once Ayatollah started becoming popular among the radical Islamists, then Sunnis played their own games, and then at the same time Russians had come into Afghanistan. The America had got Pakistan to play their role in throwing them out, and huge amount of aid was given to them: arms, ammunition, dollars, all kinds of assistance was given to them. And this happened during General Ziaul Haq's time, between 1979 and 88, when he died in the plane crash, or was killed in a plane crash. And he ensured, because in Pakistan the only aim of the army is there, even of the radical Islamists, to get hold of Kashmir, because Kashmir is predominantly Muslim. And therefore he decided that I must make use of this opportunity, because the whole world is dependent on him. At least the Americans are dependent on him for throwing out the Soviet Union communists from Afghanistan. So he diverted a large number of large amount of funds, weapons, ammunition, all kinds of newly created infrastructure to create problems in Kashmir, and that is how the uprising took place, which is now by and large under control, because Pakistan has been weakened to a great extent. Now, I would, since this question was asked, does Kashmir belong to India? Frankly, I have been wanting to ask people. I mean, was the creation of Pakistan itself based on any logic? I mean, in the whole world, if you look anywhere in the world, is a nation, is an old civilization which forms a country. At least that's what the British ruled. They ruled India. Can you partition it to form another country purely based on religion? And in any case, it was not even based on religion, because at that time nearly 8-9% of the Pakistani population was Hindu, which is today now reduced to less than 1%. Therefore, and this has been proved, the two nation theory was demolished when Bangladesh was created. That means one of your own countries broke away from you, because if a country can be purely formed on religion, then why should one part break away from you? And therefore, the question need not be asked, does Kashmir belong to India? Question needs to be asked, was Pakistan's creation any logical step? It is just because the British wanted to have a lackey. British wanted to have someone in the northwest to oppose the communists in 1949, 47, 48, when Soviet Union and Chinese were both becoming. Soviet Union in any case was communist, and China was becoming a communist, and they came to power in 1949. They wanted this area where the approach access is only through Pakistan, through northwest India. So they wanted that to be given to someone who could listen to them, and there are a huge number of literature is now available which proves this fact, that it was the British who supported Jinnah to create Pakistan. And once Jinnah died early on, Pakistan has always been ruled by the military, because military was the strongest institution that Pakistan got at the time of partition. So the question should be asked from Pakistan and not from India. So on this issue, I will not talk anything more. Now, I will come to this question of there is another question being asked about Kashmir, and unfortunately or fortunately, this question is not asked by Kashmiris themselves because they know the reality. The question is asked by our left liberal media who are always out to disrupt the Indian unity, as to Kashmir was being treated as a colony and they were being discriminated against. Now, this is totally false narrative. It is not based on any facts, and even the Kashmiris themselves have accepted that this is not true. And despite India not being a very, despite India not being a very rich country. At least till 1990, we were still an underdeveloped country when the uprising started. We looked after Kashmir. In fact, many people were saying that other states are getting a stepmotherly treatment than Kashmiris are getting. So I will just, frankly, I would just read out few figures. The detailed of these are contained in my book, but I will read out some figures which are not my figures. These are figures which are available on various government data, Survey of India, census, and various government handouts over a period of last 30 years. But most of these figures pertain to the time between 90 and in the 80s and later 90 to about 2015, when the insurgency was between 2000 and 2010, when insurgency was really widespread, and before that in 80s, when the insurgency was being hatched up by the powers that be. Now, let me first give out some of the parameters of social parameters. Now, if you see this in, there is not even one social parameter in which J&K is not among the first one or two or three states, and India has got 29 states, so many union territories. Perhaps it has more. I have lost the count. Among all the states, I'll just give out some of the socio-economic figures that Kashmir depicts, and this is during the period when insurgency was going on, or just before that when insurgency was being hatched. Now, literacy rate. Uh, J&K has a literacy rate of 64.8%, and the national average is 65.4%. Sex ratio, J&K has 923 out of 1,000. That is 923 women and 1,000 men. And the national average is 933 and 1,000 men. Birth rate, J&K 19.9 for 1,000, and national average is 25.8. This is a very big parameter. It's a very important parameter. And then you go to death rate. J&K is 5.4 out of every 1,000, and national average is 8.5 out of 1,000. Infant mortality 45 out of 1,000 for J&K, and India 68 out of 1,000. Life expectancy, male J&K 63.6, India 63.9, and female 62.1, and India 66.9. Now, over a period of last, because this is based on 2001 census, and over a period of time, it has gone even better in favor of J&K. Now, some of the other economic parameters, whether it is types of boat, because the boat industry is very big in Kashmir, for the simple reason that we have huge Dal Lake, we have Wooler Lake, and we used to have Achar Lake in olden days. And tourist industries entirely, largely depend on this, not entirely depend, but largely in this, or hotel industry or forests cover. Even in all this, the total employment, total people dependent on this is nearly 90.8999% is all Muslim, local Muslims. So there obviously is no discrimination. Now, in even during insurgency, this is the only place in Kashmir, except Punjab, where the agricultural operations are undertaken by hired labor, from mostly from Bihar and Odisha. Education from elementary to the professional university level is free. Per capita savings, per capita consumption of animal protein is the highest in India. It it has the highest expenditure incurred on clothing. It is perhaps the only place where everyone owns a house. This is something which Indians and other states will be surprised to know, that in Kashmir there is no concept of living on a rented house. Everyone owns a house. Average household assets are worth 1100,000, and in India, Kerala is next with 7,751,000. This is a report published by National Survey Organization, National Statistical Office in 2009. Now I can continue with these figures, which are not, these economic figures generally bore people. What I am trying to say is this: that all this talk of discrimination against Kashmiris, and that is why they rose in revolt, kind of thing, it has really no meaning. And Kashmiris themselves are saying this. Like, there is an old saying, there is a not old saying. The Jamaat Islami chief. SAR Jilani once said that don't talk of economy. This uprising is not because of economy. This uprising is because of Islam, and they accepted it clearly. And now this is something that Pakistan exploited day in and day out. And today a situation has come. Not today. I mean, if you see the situation the last about 10 years, Pakistan itself has become a victim of what they thought they will create for the problem thought they created for. As once Hillary Clinton said, you can't, rear snakes in your backyard, because snakes will bite you also. And today, if Pakistan is in trouble, it is mostly because of its flawed policies towards Kashmir. They wanted to cut India by 1,000 cuts, make India bleed through 1,000 cuts. But eventually, what happened was that these very elements, these very militant organizations, the Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed or Al-Badr, and so many of these organizations eventually became so powerful within their own countries that they are a threat to Pakistan, and Pakistan has enormously suffered because of them. But Indians did not make them suffer. It is they themselves who created these organizations, which are now playing very hell with Pakistan. And if you see, Pakistan's complete policies, unfortunately, ever since independence, are based on enmity towards India. They have no other. If you see Pakistan television, if you listen to their Pakistan radio, or if you see their literature that is being produced by them, I was, well, while traveling in some of the countries abroad, in various embassies, I would see their literature. It's all full of lies. Everything is based on India, as to what India is doing. That they are not worried about their own country is the reason why today they are in a big mess. And their economy is totally shattered, and their societies are divided. They have the elite rule there. Poor people have no voice at all. Just only a couple of days back, I was reading that because of hardly any foreign exchange reserves, they stopped import of luxury cars. But the elite in the country created so much of noise that they had to rescind this order. So Pakistan itself should understand that. it cannot really. There's not much it can do with India. We are a huge country, and we are diverse country. We have so many languages. We have so many ethnicities. We have a democracy. All people elect their own leaders, and they should take care of themselves. Their game plan of Kashmir is definitely this was the last thing they did, because conventional wars did not produce any result for them. So they thought that we will make use of the Kashmiris and make them rise and revolt and do uprising and kill people, and throw out one of the religious groups, microscopic religious group from Kashmir, and we will. That's how we will capture Kashmir. But it has not happened. But one thing definitely the Islamists have been able to do, and which is rather painful, and is that a place where over the centuries, when the Hindus had become a minority over a period of 700 years, but there was still about 4 lakh Kashmiri Pandits, whom you call Kashmiri Pandits, actually Kashmiri Hindus. They were still living there, and there was an element of bhaichara, what you call brotherhood, little bit. That was dealt a very severe blow by this Pakistan sponsored insurgency, and today that microscopic minority, about 400,000 people, are spread all over the world, and I'm not sure whether they have a chance of returning, because in 33 years we have not seen any move towards that, though Article 370 has been removed and 35A has been removed, and many other things are happening there. We can see Tiranga rallies there, and we can see Tiranga now being carried, much against what Mehbooba Mufti had said, that you won't get a shoulder to carry Tiranga. I mean, that anti-Indian statement has been proved, laid to rest by the Kashmiris themselves. But Kashmiri Pandits have not been able to go back, because unless government takes some more concrete steps and has a policy towards it, I am not sure whether that will be possible or not. In the meantime, over the last, I would say, about 15 years, a number of efforts are being made in Kashmir to restore our temples, to restore our places of sages and saints. Particularly, if you know, in the 14th century, 15th, 16th till 16th century, Kashmir produced a galaxy of saints, galaxy who had an immense influence on the religious thought, not just of Kashmiri Pandits, but of Hindus all over the world, all over India at least. And their places of abode, and their sthapans, and their peetams, they were totally they got neglected. Many were desecrated, but efforts have been made in the last couple of years by various agencies, including some help from the government of India, government, local government, some even local people who helped us restore those. And it's a very good sign that in a multi-ethnic and multi-religious country like ours, we cannot allow a religious group to be completely thrown out from a place, even if it has a 99.9% population of other religion. But Islamic radicalism, which was responsible for throwing us out, is not something restricted to Kashmir, though Kashmiri Pandits became its first victims, if you may say, if I may say so. It is Afghanistan, Pakistan, whole northwest, and we have seen what is happening. Even only a couple of days back, you saw Al Zawahiri being killed in Kabul, and we saw before that Al Qaeda chief Osama bin Laden being killed in Pakistan. So we know that it is not that simple, and unless the whole radicalization process is stopped at a very young age, and children are not exposed to radicalization in madrasas, particularly these madrasas, whether these are run by Haqqani Network or Taliban people or Northwest Frontier Province or any other place. This needs an international effort, and this cannot only be done by India. What India can do is to take care of its security, and what we can see is that India has done so. In the last few years, we have not had any militant attack in outside Kashmir, which we used to have every second day. We used to have, whether it was Kanpur or Jhansi or Varanasi or Delhi or Ahmedabad, Kanpur. So many places we had lost so many people, but those have stopped, and hopefully the initiative to destroy this culture of radicalization will finally catch up with Pakistan, and they'll start living like a civilized country. There are problems. I am not saying that India and Pakistan don't have problems with each other, but these cannot be resolved through force. These can be only resolved through dialogue, and dialogue should continue. There are so many ways to go about it, and if a problem cannot be resolved, let it be left for future generations to resolve. Why should it be why should it be you can't resolve it by war, particularly between India and Pakistan. You cannot resolve anything by war. Both are nuclear powered states, and that India has not paid back Pakistan, and because we, they created a strategic stalemate, you can say, that for 30 years they continue to bleed India in Kashmir. In Kashmir, who was actually, they were sending their militants, terrorists, radicalized Islamic terrorists, who you call jihadis. They were sending them inside, but who actually was dying? Firstly, those very jihadis were dying, but Pakistan never accepted them. They said they are not ours. And then who was dying on this side of the line of code? The Kashmiris would die. Our people in JNK, our troops would die. Now, most of the sufferings were put on people on our side of the border. And this was continuing because it was a low cost war for Pakistan. But we did not hit back. We hit back only after Pulwama. And we hit back hard. Hopefully, Pakistan should have learned that they cannot afford to take this beyond a certain point. And India is not going to take it any more lying down, and we will hit back whenever they try to do something. We will hit back. That is the only language Pakistan understands, actually, and they must start living like a civilized country. Otherwise, it is not too far away when Pakistan itself will get divided further, because the concept of Pakistan was faulty. The concept of Pakistan was irrational. The concept of Pakistan was impractical. It was created by the British with the help of feudal elements, communal elements, and rabid Islamists, only to serve their own ends at that time, at that point in history, when the Second World War had ended and the communist threat was becoming more and more visible to the Allies. Now, unless somebody has wants me to say something more, I think this issue is.
Hello. Hello.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah,
now it's fine.
it's okay. Sorry about
Yes,
that.
I can hear you now. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, yes, I can hear you. Sorry about that.
Okay. Okay.
Now, the speech was exhaustive and well said. Thank you. Were some pundits obliged to abandon their own homes? Now I think he understood the reality of the situation and asking you a question, are pundits obliged to abandon their home? Are you able to see
Uh,
that?
uh, yeah, I saw that. What is the exact question?
He is
When
asking,
was it necessary for us to abandon our houses?
correct.
Okay. Okay. Had we not abandoned our houses overnight, we would all have been killed. Or we had another alternative, that is to accept conversion to Islam. That was not acceptable to us. Therefore, we had only option left was to run away. Otherwise, people who are living there for 5,000, 6,000 years of continuous history we have behind us. We have houses, we have lands, we have orchards, our schools are there, our children are there, our religious sites are there, and we leave overnight. There must be some reason for it. So that was the reason, because we did not want to convert and we didn't want to say Pakistan Zindabad. So we left.
So we have the pleasure of having Luca Giovanazzi joining us from Milan. I thought we'll try it out so that some viewers can also appear in future to ask questions. Luca, did you hear this answer?
Yeah, I heard, and I'm asking with my poor English if some pandits were obliged to leave their own homes in Kashmir at that time. I mean, 1989 and 1990, because I heard some rumors about that. Some people, if they didn't leave their home, they were killed from Pakistani. This I don't know. Just to be clear about this, is a curiosity more than something important to answer. So, do what you think. Excuse
Okay.
me for my
No, no,
intervention.
you have been very intelligible. I have understood your question, so I'll try to answer it, sir. Actually, you see, what happened was in 1988 end. 1988, and what was the situation in the subcontinent? In the subcontinent, the situation was that Pakistan had become a big ally of United States because it was helping America to throw out Soviet Union for Afghanistan. So Pakistan was riding very high. The whole Western world was with it. Without informing America, in 1989, if you recall, the Soviet Union left Afghanistan. So America and Western allies lost complete interest in Pakistan. And therefore, Ziaul Haq and all the army, Ziaul Haq was ruling, he was a dictator, and all the army is always a very powerful place, whether they are in power or they are not in power. It's a very powerful institution in Pakistan. So they decided that this is the right time to get Kashmir, to gobble up Kashmir, because in 89, 90, 91, India was its weakest politically. Between 89 and 97, we had 8 prime ministers. Somebody was coming, somebody was going, and therefore total political instability was there. Now, during the late 80s, a large number of Kashmiris who were motivated by the concept of Islamic Jihad went to Pakistan through line of control, got trained there, and came back. And from end 88, and I would like to mention that one of the first victims of the Islamic killing was my cousin sister. She was killed 200 meters away from her home. Her name was Sheila Tikoo. And at that time, nobody understood why she was killed. Then, in the beginning of 89, somebody was killed somewhere. Then, in September 89, one of a very prominent persons called Tikalal Taplu was killed. And it was they shouted Allahu Akbar, and they put the posters there. This is JKLF has done it, and then the killing started. Now we have to understand that there were 400,000 Kashmiri Pandits in a population of nearly about 60 lakh people, and they were all distributed in small packets. In a village there will be 10 homes of Kashmiri Pandits and there will be 200 homes of Muslims. In the city there will be a locality of Kashmiri Pandits surrounded all over by Muslims. And at that time every Kashmiri Muslim was part of this movement. So when even in my own street, which is about which had 9 beds till we were living on one of the tributaries of Jhelum, around our house, 300 meters radius, there were 8 or 9 killings took place in a space of just about a month or so. Similarly, they would kill people and throw the body in front of a Kashmiri Pandit. And now you might say that where was the government? There was no government. The government machinery was totally subverted. And the governor came, the chief minister was dismissed. The governor came on 18 January. He reached Jammu, and 19 January 1990, whole Kashmir, every single man in Kashmir was out on the streets when the temperature was -5. And all the minarets of the mosques had public announcement system giving slogans asking Kashmiri Pandits to be prepared to get killed or leave this place. And there was no government, there was nobody to save you. And with these killings taking place and everyone seeing, it's a small community of about 300,000 people in a whole valley. So there was killing here, there was killing there, everyone was seeing blood flowing. So they left because there was no way anybody could save them, or they had to join them and say, okay, I am also Muslim from tomorrow. They would then not do anything to you. This was not acceptable, and that's how Kashmiri Pandits left, because the whole government machinery which was supposed to save you had got completely subverted. That is the reason.
Okay, but if I can continue,
Please.
nowadays, how the situation is? Because I know that many Muslims can live in India, but no, it's not vice versa. Some Hindu do not live in Pakistan. This is what I mean, what I heard. But nowadays, how it is in Kashmir?
Okay, now 2 points. First of all, I do not know what is your experience about the Muslims, but let me tell you, because I have lived in Kashmir, and I have been brought up there and have studied in the school. We are exposed to a lot of Muslims, so we know what Muslims think. As far as Pakistan is concerned, at the time of partition, Pakistan had 9% population of non-Muslim, that is Hindus and Sikhs. There were many killings during partition. We are not talking about that. We are talking about Hindus who were left after partition. Now, today, there's hardly anyone left. There may be about 100,000, 200,000 left out of lakhs, out of millions. Because they feel threatened. They are converted. You have seen in Sindh province alone, every year 1,000 Hindu girls are kidnapped, converted to Islam, and married to Muslims. This is coming in all. This is not my story. This is being said everywhere. This is given in their own press. Now, as far as Kashmir is concerned, previously, because there was Article 370 and 35A in vogue, at that time, no Indian could go and buy property there. any Kashmiri could buy property in rest of India. Therefore, whereas the Muslims of Kashmir are owning, even today, if you go to Bangalore, Jaipur, Delhi, Calcutta, Ahmedabad, and such places, Pune, they are big centers of Kashmiri tradesmen and businessmen owning big properties. They can, but no Indian could go and buy property there because there was Article 370 which prohibited you from doing that. But after the removal of Article 370, neutralizing after Article 370 and 35A, now it is possible for Hindus, for non-Muslims to go and live there, or any Muslim from India to go and live there. But it is a process which is going to take a lot of time because individual, no, Kashmiri Pandits are the ones who should go first. But unfortunately, after the removal of Article 370, 10 Kashmiri Pandits have been killed in targeted killings. So there is that element of fear because every single Pandit going back to Kashmir cannot be protected by police or army or anyone. They have to be, the local people have to ensure that they remain protected. In a huge of Muslim population, and non-Muslim can live only if the local people decide that we have to protect them. So this is the reason why Article 370, 35A neutralization has not contributed much as of now to the relocation of Kashmiri Pandits there, or non-Muslims from India or Muslims from India to that place.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
No, thank you, Luca. Luca used to be a regular visitor to India, and he was heading the engineering at a company called Iveco, which is part of Fiat. And I think his question came up because there used to be trainees from Pakistan in Iveco. That would have probably influenced Luca. And I was really surprised when he asked that question because he was regularly watching our programs, previous series. And when he asked that question, it came up right away from him based on his experience and watching the geopolitical events here. And it's very nice. And Luca, you have to do us a favor by answering people who ask the same question to you.
Okay,
Will you do
well,
that?
I can do if I can understand because as I told, my English is really poor. So if the question are put very slowly, maybe that I can answer a little bit, but I don't know what the answer could be. And then also a problem of time because I cannot stay here much longer.
Okay. Thank you so much, and nice seeing you. We look forward to seeing you again. Thank you. Thank you, Colonel G. That was a great answer, and I think you spoke to most of the people abroad, explaining the situation here, and those who have such doubts. Like
Thank
you
you.
clarified earlier, that I think he's probably talking about the other part of Pakistan. I see one or two questions here. Pakistan. This is not
Can
a
I
question. I
can,
think
can I get a minute, please?
yes. No, while Karan ji joins us back, I would like to make a few announcements here. Um, Colonel Ji has also written a book. The title is Kashmir, its Aborigines and the Exodus. So, as you know, I was just mentioning about your book, and we have a book review session, a monthly book review session by Rogini ji, and we would like to cover your book also sometime in the near future.
Yes, actually, this was my book. Was one of the first ones giving a detailed account. This is the book.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
it is a very big book. It gives a complete account of the Kashmir issue as far as it impinged on the exodus of Kashmiri Pandits, and then their exodus. How did it take place? What happened after the exodus? What was being propagated? how that was not correct, and all those things. I mean, as much as one could get, this book has been in the market for some time, and many people, since it's a very big book, and these days people don't have that kind of time, but the researchers are reading it.
No, there are very good books on Kashmir. We thought we'll do on monthly review of a book. We will coordinate through Rogini Vaishnavi, who has
Clear.
already done two book review sessions. And I was just going to ask you a question that came in YouTube. I'll read that out. A great discourse. 1989 conditions, we Kashmiris left Kashmir. Was very strange. Rest of India was not even aware of the atrocities. Reality, politicians played with the emotions of Kashmiri Pandits. What do you see is going to revive amongst youth? And have you suggested or would suggest to national leadership for change of psychology of Kashmir?
Uh, Shankarji, can you please repeat that question? I
Yes,
want
yes.
to understand what the question is.
Sir, with due respect, at all the exercise today's India is doing, talking about Kashmiri, what do you see is going to revive amongst youth? And have you suggested or would suggest to national leadership for change of psychology of Kashmiris?
Uh, it's a
He's asking you to address about the youth situation. You know.
Yeah, you see, it's a very very difficult. In fact, this is, I would, if you really ask me, this is India's biggest challenge today, and that is to prevent radicalization of not just Kashmiri Muslim. We see the radicalization in the Muslim society as such, and this is a very big challenge. There are many things are being done, and it will need enormous amount of time. In Kashmir itself, you see, because there is a, why I am saying it, this is very difficult, because India is a democracy, it's an open society, everyone has the liberty and the freedom to preach what they want to preach. And when you get hold of very very young minds and infuse in them a spirit of radicalization, then it is very difficult to take it out. I'll just give you an example. Recently we had this issue of decapitating people. There were 5 6 incidents where people's head were cut off because some debater on the television debate had spoken something about holy prophet. Now now that happened, so you can imagine the kind of radicalization that took place, and they took off the heads of that person. Now that is one part. Look at the other part. There was a boy, he's barely, I think, 22, 23. He crossed the international border from Pakistan to India with 2 knives in his hand, and he wanted to come and decapitate this debater on the television. You can imagine the level of radicalization. He thought that he could enter India, cross international border with 2 knives in his hand, then find out that person, then go to that person, then kill it. You can imagine the level of brainwashing that person has gone. Now, what do you tell that such fellow? This is the type of radicalization that has come into some of the Muslim youth, and this can only be taken away after a long process of de-radicalization. And India, actually, India is the best place to do it, because we have an open society. People are willing to talk. People are welcome to debate. But this is a huge challenge, and if we are able to do it, then I think situation will improve. As far as Kashmir is concerned, overall ground situation is better, but killings are still taking place, and radicalization will take many many more years to end.
I think this point you touched upon earlier. Pakistan was adamant that they won't vacate from India. This is from Panju. India should have taken a stern step. I think at the time you said priorities were different and it was all new and still dictated by British. And so I think this was 1947 October that you talked about.
Yes, this is a. There are so many mistakes we committed. First of all, a military operation was halted without taking the military commanders into confidence. Nobody asked them what needs to be done. I mean, after all, it was a military campaign. The least that could have been done is to consult the military commanders. So at that time, Jawaharlal Nehru went to United Nations without consulting military commanders. He accepted ceasefire without consulting military commanders. And we know that now many documents are being declassified, and we know that who played what game and what pressures were applied to Jawaharlal Nehru, and he took those decisions much against the national interest. I am sure he did not have bad intentions. We cannot blame Jawaharlal Nehru for having. We can never accuse him. He was a great nationalist, but those decisions were taken which have today failed to, which have created problems for India on a permanent basis. So we did make mistakes, and we are paying heavily for that. Otherwise, at that time, 40, after all, we drew them away from Srinagar to Uri. We drew them away from Naushera to Poonch. We could have continued with that. There's only one third was left, and India did have the capacity at that time. But we went to United Nations, we accepted the ceasefire, and now we are strung with a huge problem at our hands.
Just wanted to ask you one more, take up one point. You mentioned about economic statistics and all you gave, and everything that you mentioned about Jammu and Kashmir, everything was favorable, right? Right from employment situation to birth rate and mortality, everything was favorable, even
Yes,
employment situation.
absolutely.
But
You
what
see,
is
you have to see what was happening in the rest of the country. I'll tell you, Kashmir has always got more money than it could contribute to the GDP. It has been a story of Kashmir because Kashmir was, for generating its own resources, it had no industry. Why it
Yeah,
had
that's
no
what I was going
industry?
to say. There is no
Yeah, because
manufacturing or anything.
nothing, because there was only tourism. Because in Kashmir there were no industry because nobody from outside could go and establish an industry. Suppose somebody wanted to put Maruti factory there, he can't go because he can't own the land. Suppose Tata wants to establish something there, he cannot. So there was no industry practically. Whatever industry was run by the government, and the no government can run industry. You have to give it to the private players. So then there was tourism industry was very big there, and it is because of tourism industry that some prosperity came. But let me tell you, in Kashmir could not even generate resources to pay its own employees. Even that money was coming from India. So, and one of the biggest problems was this Article 370. Article 370 did not only create mental barriers between Kashmiris and rest of Indians, it also created huge vested interests. There were so many laws which were not applicable
Yes.
to Kashmir. And those laws which were not applicable to Kashmir, they were being exploited by two or three families, because those two or three families only ruled Kashmir citizens, whether it is Sheikh Abdullah, whether it is Bakshi Ghulam Ahmad, whether it is Mufti. They are the families who ruled there. And they did what they wanted to do under the facade of Article 370, not allowing them to do A, B, C, D. So now that it is only 3 years since Article 370 has been removed, but it is going to take another decade for situation to improve, and things will slowly start going towards a better direction.
Well, we'll monitor the progress and keep calling you to
Thank you.
update what's going on. And thank you so much. I think we exceeded our time limit today. It was wonderful
Thank you.
having you and clarifying questions,
Thank
especially
you.
from someone from Italy. Thank you, Colonel Tikuji, and we'll stay in touch and see you again in the near future. Thank you, viewers. Today's session was interesting question and answer series, and we hope to conduct similar Q&A in every lecture session. Just wanted to also mention to you that we talked about temple tourism, and we have some plans going on. We will announce about temple tourism um, itinerary that is being worked out by somebody who appeared in our series earlier. We'll mention about that and also communicate to you so that we can start this tourism. So, batch of 30, 40 tourists at a time. We are working on that, and once details are available, I'll share that with you. We want to thank Kamakoti.tv and Kanjimat channels for streaming our Kashmiri series. Also want to thank Dinamalar, which is regularly covering our events every Tuesday or Wednesday in um Tamil daily newspaper, which is leading in India. We also want to thank VDSP for supporting our streaming every week. We look forward to seeing you next Saturday, same time. Till then, Jai Jai Shankara, Hara Hara Shankara.